first and foremost, Matt, I want to get your opinion here. There's been a lot of flying reports. There's been a lot of confirms, denies, and everything in between. Take us through the timeline of yesterday of how this first planned out, what was first said, where it went from there, and where we are now that officially Michael LaFleur is no longer the offensive coordinator.
Yeah. So I was in the middle of work and I started seeing reports from a strange source about the Jets parting ways with offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur from Aaron Wilson, who is I guess normally a Houston Texans reporter, but I guess he does break some stories on the national stage. So I was a little skeptical at first. And then came the instant denials from the beat writers, like, no, this is not true. Hey, this has not been decided. They're still deliberating what they want to do. Um, and then there was silence from Aaron Wilson, and a lot of people that know Aaron Wilson reached out, and he confirmed to them that he's sticking with his source, and he believes that what he said was right. And then all of a sudden, later, he turned out to be correct. And then all of a sudden, the Jets are parting ways with LaFleur. Um, so it was a wild. Oh, he's gone. No, he's still there. Oh, no, he's gone again. Back and forth. A wild roller coaster, like any other day, being a Jets fan. So it was par for the course. And then, yeah, so now we're just left with speculation of what really happened. Whether he was fired, they agreed to part ways. Did Woody the decree onto them that they had to fire LaFleur? Did he lay down the wood saying, "Hey, this is how it's going to be"? Did Saleh cave in? Did Joe Douglas just stand by? There's so many things that have been on the top of everybody's mind lately, and speculations galore. And a lot of it, I feel like, is all just made up, uh, craziness that fans
Nonsense.
like to believe. The just the fuel the fires of gossip and storytelling. But I think there's a lot that's been said by Saleh, by JD, by Woody that have kind of painted a picture that I feel is acceptable. I would like to hear what you think the real story is, though.
Yeah, I think it's very, very simple, and I'm not going to hold any punches or try and beat around the bush here. Robert Saleh fired Michael Floor. That is what I think happened, and I think the initial report from Aaron Wilson that came out earlier yesterday morning was 100% accurate. And I think the only reason that it's turned into this circus, for lack of a better word, is because the Jets got scooped. And they don't usually like to let information leak out of their building. They usually like to be the ones that break it so they can form and set the narrative how they see fit. And they didn't get that opportunity this time, where news broke sooner than they were expecting, and they had to do damage control. That's where you saw the immediate from the Jets, let's get the beat on the phone and go, nope, this isn't true. We haven't fired him yet. They weren't outright vehemently denying that he wasn't going to get fired, but they were very clear that he has not been fired yet, and this decision's still ongoing. Well, only a few short hours later, it came out that they were mutually parting ways, and apparently, as the story has been told and as Robert Saleh has tried to pass off as true, the Jets were planning on keeping Michael Floor. Then this report that was not accurate, quote unquote, comes out and says that Michael Floor is going to be fired and that he is going to be moving on and no longer going to be the offense coordinator. That apparently caused other teams and organizations around the league to call the Jets and inquire about LaFleur's availability, presumably to hire them for themselves in some sort of similar role, you would think, as an offensive coordinator, if this is going to be a lateral move for Michael LaFleur. So after that happens, they have their conversations, and Saleh and LaFleur and Joe Douglas and everybody all agree that it's best if LaFleur goes and seeks out these other opportunities that he could have. I don't buy that at all. There is nothing in me that thinks that that is remotely even close to true. How on earth would the New York Jets, being in the position that they are, if they were believing in Michael LaFleur after the results that we have seen and said, you know what, we're going to run it back with this guy, Robert Saleh. He's, I know this guy personally. I believe him. I trust in him, and we're going to keep him here. Why would other teams calling and asking about his availability change their mind? Why would that lead them to go in the opposite direction and go, this guy that we have faith in, that we believe in, that we're going to ride through the storm with and be here and work it out. We want to keep LaFleur here. Another team calling and saying, hey, is he available? We'd like to, give him an opportunity. He could come work for us. We're trying to get opportunities and see who we can fill out on our staff. Why would that ever cause the Jets to turn around and do the opposite and let LaFleur go seek other opportunities? If anything, you would think it would lead them to keep LaFleur even more. If
Yeah.
anything, you would think that that's reinforcing their decision to keep him, to go, hey, well, it's a good thing we are keeping this guy because other guys around the league, they seem to want him too. And if you remember, Matt, you go back when the Jets were playing the Seattle Seahawks and Robert Saleh was talking about, I think he made this reference to Mike LaFleur directly, actually, where he was talking about players that the Jets had let out of their building a little bit early that had gone on to succeed in other places. And he brought up Geno Smith, saying this is a guy the Jets had, and he got out, to when he was young, and he had some rough play as a starter early on in his career. And he goes on and goes to some other organization and is able to thrive and continue on with his career. And how many times are the Jets going to see players that they have walk out of the building and go thrive somewhere else? Well, this is the exact situation. And you're telling me that after saying that Robert Saleh went, yeah, sure. You know what? We were going to keep you, but another team wants you. So just go ahead. We're fine. We can change our minds now. BS. I don't buy that for anything. You couldn't give that away to me, let alone buy it. I think the reality of this situation, like I said at the start, Robert Saleh made a call, knew this offense was really struggling, knew that he had a playoff caliber team, and even with the injuries and even with the instability at quarterback, they had an opportunity to get into the postseason. They had an opportunity to make some noise and break the longest playoff drought in currently the NFL period for any other team by a wide margin. And you just saw the complete and total collapse from the offense at the end of the year, where they only score 4 touchdowns over their last 5 games. They went their entirety of their last 3 games without scoring a touchdown at all. And your offense was dead in the water pretty much as soon as Mike White's ribs broke. That is not a sustainable situation. The other side of this that's really important that I've seen a lot of people arguing that you alluded to, Matt, I don't think this was a Woody Johnson decision either, because it doesn't seem like there's much friction between Joe Douglas and Saleh. From Robert Saleh's press conference today, the first he's had since this news was breaking, I didn't get the impression that he was beaten down. I didn't get the impression that this is a guy that's being forced to go up on the podium and claim a decision that wasn't his, and that he would rather have kept LaFleur. And Woody said, no, you're firing him. I'm the owner. It's my decision. I did not get that impression whatsoever. I got the impression that Saleh made this call and he's trying to do right by his friend and save face and make things look as nice as possible and give him other opportunities. Where, I do not see a world where, I'm not trying to sit here and say I think Woody Johnson's perfect and that he never would ever do something like this or defend Woody in any sort of capacity here. I just don't think that's what happened. And there's nothing from this situation that I've seen publicly from anybody or just how it's being sold to the masses that says that this was a Woody Johnson scorched earth. I'm making the call and Coach Saleh deal with it or leave. That's not the vibe that I get whatsoever. So I think it's very important for everyone to realize Robert Saleh made this call and he knew that things had to change and he knew that he had to go in a different direction and find someone that knows what they're doing at offensive coordinator, because for all intents and purposes, it's now his job on the line going into the future. And if the Jets were to have another stinker of a year in 2023 and win 5 or 6 games and miss the playoffs again, Robert Saleh is probably without a job. Joe Douglas is probably without a job. And the Jets are hitting the reset button once again for what feels like the umpteenth time. This was a needed move. And we've had discussions over the last couple of weeks, you and I, Matt, where we've been talking about LaFleur and how he's in over his head and how we're dying to see any amount of creativity or changes to the scheme where you don't have to completely flip your offense overnight. And we know the offensive line is struggling and we know the quarterback position is struggling, but we just want to see more of an effort and more of a plan to try and make up for that. And I know we had a discussion when we were, I think it was last week, when we were talking about the possibilities of LaFleur being let go. And the point that I made that I'm going to stick to is it's so much more about the process than the results in a lot of ways. Where if the Jets offense was failing because their offensive line is awful and their quarterback situation is a disaster, for lack of a better word, but we saw LaFleur trying to fit in new wrinkles, trying to, come up with ways to change his offense and put guys in the best position to succeed, and it just wasn't working because the execution wasn't there. That's a completely and totally different story. The players are not without fault, and the injuries are not, completely are not irrelevant to the situation. There are other factors at play here. It is not solely Michael LaFleur was calling the wrong plays, and if he just called something different, everything would have been better. But we saw the exact same offense with Mike White and Cedric Abwehi and Mike Remmers at tackle and Dan Feeney starting at guard at the end of the season, as we did week 2 and week 3, when you had your as healthy of an offensive line as you could have hoped for. Brees Hall in the backfield, Elijah Vera Tucker, whether it was early Zach Wilson or late Joe Flacco, what have you. This was always the exact same offense. And what we had been begging for so long was some game planning to their opponent each and every week. Some plays specifically taken off film from other teams that have worked against their current opponent in the past, and seeing that they can implement that for themselves, or just really any sort of an idea to feel like the Jets offensive coaching staff knew what they were doing and knew who they were going against. Where I feel like LaFleur had this idea in his head that our system is so good, it doesn't matter what defense we're going against. And that I'm going to have answers to, regardless of what we're seeing, we know if we can identify the coverage pre-snap, we'll have an answer for it. And it doesn't matter the scheme. It doesn't matter the players. Go through your progressions. And if it's not there, get to the check down as fast as possible and we'll be okay. That's not good enough in the NFL. It's just not. You can't run an offense like that. The defenses are too good. They're too smart. And it's not a sustainable way to have a functioning offense. So I think this was Robert Saleh doing what he had to do as head coach of the New York Jets for the good of this team, for the future, for the good of the any hopes of luring in any veteran quarterback, if that's going to be the case, or if they plan on drafting another quarterback either this year or next year or sometime in the near future. They knew they had to have somebody else in this building that could guide this offense to where they want it to be. And it just wasn't Michael LaFleur. And it's a tough decision. You hate to see it happen, but it's a business. This is the NFL. The positive for LaFleur, before anybody gets anything twisted, his contract is guaranteed, so he's getting paid. And he's likely going to get another job somewhere else. Whether it's as an offensive coordinator or not is yet to be seen. But while I may not buy that there was a ton of inquiries from other teams looking to hire him, if he gets a job pretty quickly, then maybe it was true. If not, at the very least, I think he's going to end up in Green Bay working with his brother. So
Yes,
Michael LaFleur is going to be okay.
we'll be fine.
And we, as I don't want people to sit here and trash Michael LaFleur and turn this into the "you're so terrible" show, and we need to sit there and dance on this guy's grave, because that's not what this is about. But we can also objectively look at the situation and objectively look at the process as well as the results and say, this isn't good enough and we need to go in a new direction. That's what Robert Saleh did. And I'm really glad as a head coach that he had the balls to do it.
I'd agree. See, I think I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction in how I think this all went down, because I feel like there's morsels of truth in how they said things went. But of course, those little morsels don't add up to the picture that they really painted. So when they say that they wanted to keep LaFleur, I think that they did have discussions about keeping him. I don't think they had discussions about keeping him in his current role, though. And therefore, was he fired or was he forced out? And I don't think it really matters what term you want to use. But if they were going to diminish his role in any way, I don't think that's a situation he was really going to stand for. And when it comes to other inquiries from other teams, yeah, maybe that's just his brother calling, say, "Yeah, I got you, bro. Like, you need a place you need a couch to lay on. I got one right here in Green Bay." So yeah, they can be like, "Okay, yeah, there's an inquiry from another team, and look, we were going to keep him as maybe a passing game coordinator and bring in whole new coaches or whatever, and whatever. Maybe there's some truth to that." And I completely agree. I don't think that anything was a mandate or dictated by Woody. Uh, between Douglas and Sala, they're just not the guys that will take that kind of dictation about who their staff is,
No, no,
about
they're not.
about the decisions they are making. It seems like the vision that they painted to Woody is the vision that Woody's still following, and he's not going to jeopardize that by uh, being the Woody of old, the Woody that will do anything to get Tebow in. I don't think that's what happened at all. I completely agree with you. And the fact remains, change needed to happen. I believe what Woody did get across to Sala and everybody was that this was bad. This what happened this season was horrible. Uh, he won't stand for it. The fans won't stand for it. Something needs to change. Something that will make sure that this doesn't happen again. Now, I don't think that's dictating, hey, fire LaFleur, but I think that means look within and figure out what you're going to do to fix this. And yeah, after that, I believe Salah looked within and realized, yeah, we need to change a lot of things on offense. And that starts up front with LaFleur.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think that there's a fine difference between Woody Johnson giving his opinion and saying, I think the offense needs to be improved, and I don't know if this guy's the right guy to do it, and letting Saleh know how he feels and giving him a mandate to change someone on his staff because he's the owner and he says so. There is a huge, huge difference between those two things. And I think it's very likely that Woody Johnson gave that opinion. But I really don't think that Sala is the type of person, quite honestly, that would stand up and take that. I don't think that he would be the type of coach that would ever let an owner tell him what he has to do with his staff, especially if this was a situation where Sala wanted to keep him. I really don't think that Robert Sala would be comfortable going along with that sort of situation. And I think he would go to Joe Douglas and say, Joe, I don't know what I can do. I don't know if I can be here. This is a major problem. This is not the working relationship that I want. And from everything that we've heard from not only Douglas himself, but Sala as well, Woody has given them the autonomy to make their decisions. Now, could that just be them speaking to the public and saving face for the owner, publicly? Sure. We can't sit here and say for a guarantee that that isn't the case, but I really feel like there would be more friction. I feel like we would be able to see it in their faces and the way they're talking. The one thing about Robert Saleh that I can say is he tries to stick and do the coach speak and say what he has to say when he has to say it as the coach, but you can always tell that when he's being genuine and when he's not. You can tell when he's just giving the coach speak answer. You can tell when he's just saying what he has to say to the media. And you can tell when he genuinely believes something and when it's just something he has to say. And I did not get that impression whatsoever that this was something that he's going up on the podium and he's got Woody with the dagger eyes standing behind him with his arms crossed, waiting for him to say the wrong thing. That's not what I felt. And I don't know. I'd have to double check exactly which reporter asked the question. I think it was Connor Hughes, but I'm not 100% sure. But they had the press conference earlier today, and Saleh was talking about how they had the inquiries from other teams. And he said, I'm going to try and do right by people and give him this opportunity to go seek something else. And we think that'd be in the best interest for everybody. So I think what you're saying, Matt, is very, very likely that LaFleur was likely getting demoted. And that if he was going to stay, it was not going to be as the head offensive coordinator, and that there might be another role that could be around. So maybe the other inquiries from teams could have been, well, we have a passing game coordinator spot, or we have a position coach spot, and LaFleur, you might just be nothing more than a quarterback coach, or you might just be nothing more than an offensive assistant. And here's an opportunity for you to go somewhere else and continue your career and not have to face the brunt of the media of you got fired. And I think this is Saleh trying to help his friend in any way he can in a tough situation. But it's obvious that it was his call. And Hughes asked the question, if you had guys calling about this guy that you were planning to keep, why would that make you want to get rid of him? Exactly like what we're saying. And Saleh's answer was basically, well, we wanted to give him the best opportunity possible. That means he was getting cut down.
The best
That to
opportunity is
me,
not with them.
right. That means that the best opportunity for Michael Floor was not here with the New York Jets. And Saleh knew that. And he didn't seem like heartbroken, disheveled, beaten down. If this was truly and honestly a Woody Johnson forcing of this situation, then give Robert Saleh an Oscar for being able to front like this was not the case. I go back to after the Denver game, where Brees Hall and Elijah Vera Tucker both get injured and both are announced out for the season at the exact same time. And you could see in Robert Saleh's face, it was like someone in his family died. He looked completely and totally disheveled. He looked completely and totally just run down and scared, for lack of a better word. I didn't get any of that from watching him today. I didn't see that in the slightest. I got the impression that this was Saleh as the leader of this team, knowing he had to make a tough call and trying to do everything he can to stand by that tough call, at the same time standing by a guy that he respects and considers a friend. And then there's quite honestly, that's the best you could hope for a head coach, where you're making the right call for the team and you're not going out of your way to go scorched earth on the guy on the way out. I think this is how you handle things like a professional.